Want to give a shout out to our band, the four not so headless horsemen.
We'll change this later and stuff. It's okay.
Thanks y'all for coming. I'm Michaela Bell. I am a senior here at Eastern. That sounds real weird to say. But the best part about TNL is getting to tell my story. So going into that, I grew up in a Christian home. I had 3 brothers and a sister, so there was a lot of us. It made life interesting. There was never a dull moment, to say the least. But even though I grew up in that Christian home, I'd heard the gospel all the time. I knew who God was. But it didn't really click for me until I was a sophomore in high school. So I was 16. Every year, my youth group goes to a conference in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge. And so that's whenever I finally realized I was still living in sin. I hadn't really committed my life to God and living for Him throughout every day. And so after that is really whenever I took hold of what it meant to live for God. And then I got plugged into my church, into my school, into FCA, and that's where you learn what it means to be a Christian. And there was key people in my life that took me in and really showed me what that meant. And then a couple years later, I come to college. I'm a freshman in college. I'm really excited. I'm going to have all this freedom, be an hour and a half away from my parents, which was a good and a bad thing. But that's kind of whenever I took a few steps back in my faith too. I didn't go to church whenever I was here my freshman year. I didn't get plugged in any kind of Christian organization. And that year was really bad. I had no friends whatsoever except for the friends that I knew that came from my home. And so going into my sophomore year, I was this is going to be a totally different story. I'm tired of just going to work, going to class, going to the dorm. That was my routine. And I knew that's not what college was about. You're supposed to have the time of your life. And so this year I was it's going to be different. And so then me and my roommate were walking to our dorm, and we see these signs for the BCM, and we're okay, this is it, we're going to go. So we finally make it down here, and I meet all of you lovely people. And I'm one of those people who kind of just doesn't talk to a whole lot of people at first, so I get real warmed up. And so it took till spring break, y'all. That's a long time just to get to talk to people. And so that took a lot of courage because I went on a spring break mission trip with the BCM. We went to New York. And there was a 14-hour drive. You get to know people in 14 hours. There's no option. You have to know them. And so that was probably one of the better experiences of my life. And I met so many people, and I realized that they are invested and they are trying to strive and live for God, and that's what I had been missing. I wasn't doing that my freshman year, and so since then, I've tried to plug in here to the BCM, get involved in Bible studies, trying to meet people, and that's whenever it all kind of clicked again for me. And then, fast forward a little bit more, and I'm going to go through a lot. So last year, yes, it was my junior year, the end of my junior year, and I was in the nursing program here at Eastern. I was being the key word in this story. The nursing program is hard, and I knew that going into it. It wasn't a big deal. I was a straight A student all the way through high school. And so I knew I could do it. There were people in my community that were nurses. I talked to them, you'll be fine. So I went in with that confidence, and I didn't I tried my best. I'm not going to say I didn't, but I wasn't good enough to stay into the program. And so last semester, I realized that I needed, you have to have a 75 to pass. I failed the class with a 73.8. So that was probably an all-time low in my life. I thought that I was going to be a nurse and I was going to use that for the Lord. I was going to go on missions and just help people in every way that I could. And then to realize that dream is not there anymore. And to have to, I thought I had to come up with a new one. And so in that moment, I guess you could say I was depressed for a little while. I didn't talk to my mom about it for probably 2 days. They just assumed that everything was fine, that I passed my class, all things were good. I just thought I was going to disappoint everybody. A lot of people here didn't know until I came back to school. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. It was a really hard time. But then this summer, I got a job as a CNA. I got this job before I realized that I was failing my classes. And so I'm going into this job thinking that I'm not going to be a nurse. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And so I go into this job thinking that it's a waste of time, but I needed the summer money. So I did it anyways. And I worked at the hospital in Corbin, and my aunt lived in Corbin. And I knew my aunt, I knew who she is, I know about her, but I never really spent time with her. And I'm not a morning person, and to be at the hospital at 6:30, that was not a possibility to drive from Richmond to Corbin, not happening. So I lived with my aunt for the summer. And she has probably been one of the godliest women that I have ever met. I didn't know that about her. I knew her story, I knew about her, but I didn't realize how invested she was. And she turned that into me this summer. She challenged me in many ways. She knew, she works in HR. She knew at the hospital, she knew that I wasn't going to pass my class. She knew that I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And she's like, Michaela, you just have to realize God has a plan for your life, and it doesn't matter what you have planned, God has something even greater for you. And that's really what hit home for me this summer, that my grades and my failing of a class, my not knowing what to do for this time in my life, does not matter, because God has a plan. And God knows what he's going to do, and I just have to trust in that. And my life verse, I guess to say oddly enough, has always been Jeremiah 29:11. And it talks about God has a plan for you, and it's not to hurt you, not to harm you, but to give you strength, hope, and a future. And so this summer, I took that to heart. God has only good things planned for us, whether we realize it or not. In that moment, I was there's no way that this can be good. And yet here I stand. I'm okay with it now. I know that God still has a plan, and it doesn't matter, that I can still serve him, whether I'm working at McDonald's for the rest of my life, which I don't plan to do. But if that's where he wants me, that's where I'm going to go. But if I'm going to do a teacher, if I end up getting into another nursing program, that's where God has me, and that's where I want to go. So I just want to encourage y'all, if you are getting down and something's bringing you down and you don't want to go there, but God has a plan for you, and it's going to get you to where he wants you to go, whether it hurts along the way or not. It's just growing you. And so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. But y'all, if y'all have any questions about what it means to be a Christian, you can come talk to us. Anybody on the leadership, we have Cole, Jonah, any of us, y'all just come talk to us and we'd love to chat with you. But thanks for coming to TNL.